Boom, we're recording.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the program today. I'm Mitch Carson, and alongside of me she's making her second appearance on Mitch's Minutes. You've heard her as the announcer, but now she gets another opportunity to be in front of the camera in my interview seat today. My mom, Cassandra Carson. Thank you for having me. Thanks for being here, Cassandra.
Thanks for having me, Mitch. You can call me Mom.
Okay, Mom. So, as we all know, 1 year ago today, on this Monday, teachers got up and out of bed and did not go to school after there was an order where schools were closed for 2 weeks because of the coronavirus pandemic. And it originally was 2 weeks, then it ended up being till further notice, and then till the end of the year. So, Chris, or Mom, we want to know, would you ever expect something like that to happen, through the school year, where schools were forced to close, not just for 2 weeks, but then ended up for the rest of the academic year? Would you ever experience something like that?
No, and I said that a lot. Of all the things I would have never, ever, that was certainly probably the biggest one of my career. It wasn't something we ever planned for, obviously. And as we lived through it, it was something that was being planned as it happened. But yes, no, that certainly is probably the number one thing in my career that I'll say that was unexpected.
So this completely took you by surprise, not just to you and other teachers, but to students and administrators too, along with their parents.
Absolutely. We essentially evaporated from school. We reported our kids were done with school on Thursday. We had an in-service Friday. So they left Thursday never to come back, and we left Friday never to come back. That school year.
So how, in this past school year alone, how much have schools changed here, not just here in central Pennsylvania, but also in the US? How much have schools changed, not just here in Pennsylvania, but also in the US since the start of this pandemic?
Well, I know there's some schools in some areas that are still not back. Many other schools, based on the educational level, K through 5, middle school or high school, are back hybrid. And then some schools like my school are full return. And what's really different is, though, the advent of kids choosing to stay home for safety, or a family feels more comfortable with that. So a lot of us are, the buzzwords have become synchronous and asynchronous, or live lessons, or Zoom, or Microsoft Teams, where we have to have a fully online component of what we do, as well as an in-person component. So I think it doesn't look like anything anybody else has ever done before. I think that's, kids learning from home, and then kids learning in a blended environment where some are in school and some are out, are definitely the two high mark things that are different from curriculum and delivery. Obviously, if you come to any school, you have masks. You'll see that rooms are as mitigated with distance as they can be. I mean, obviously, there are some real structural limitations to that. We have sport teams that aren't as visible as they normally are, or, it looks similar in some ways, but it's vastly different in most ways. Even as I speak to you today on the anniversary of closures, my whole district is in remote learning because we have COVID cases that affected transportation.
So, what was your first reaction, along with students too, when you first heard about this Zoom meeting? And did you originally think this is only going to be temporary for 2 weeks, or did you think this could be for the rest of the year?
Well, last year at the closure, for the first 2 weeks, we just kind of gave enrichment to keep the kids engaged, but we didn't really, they were giving us time to adopt a platform, kind of put our platforms on steroids, decide what they were going to do as far as attendance and as far as grading, and what of our curriculums were we going to keep in and what were we going to. So those first 2 weeks, we kind of gave the kids enrichment work. And then after that, we started looking at exactly what it would look like. Zoom was probably less used during closure. I know personally by me, but probably by a lot of people than it is now, because we just weren't teaching the depth and the breadth of lessons that we are in a regular school year. So Zoom is far more utilized now, or Teams, Microsoft Teams is far more utilized now than it was at the closure.
And and I know teachers a lot have changed since schools started doing this. But do you think the students have changed since in-person learning to remote learning, or have things stayed the same with them?
Oh no, definitely things have changed. There's of course what everybody's aware of. It's different motivation. It's easy to get lost in the not being at school, so you lose those sort of school behaviors. I think there's a lot of positive that we don't spend a lot of time talking about, but obviously kids have been resilient. Even if that doesn't look like a good grade or a good attendance, they have been surviving something and they should get credit for that. I think too, when the kids are in person, there is less talk among them, which seems kind of different than you would expect, but I think they're used to being on their devices now. So they tend to be on their devices and either take care of work or don't take care of work. I have a lot of seniors who talk to me more than ever. It seems like they kind of want that connection. So, the halls are louder, even though we have less kids, but I think they look at that as their socializing time. Like in class, they're kind of spaced out, or, the expectation is different, and they look at the hall and the common areas as where they get to socialize. So those things kind of look different.
So have kids been able to stay motivated through this, or have some slacked since this?
I think it's like I'm not going to say it's like any other time, but I don't think it would be surprising to say the kids that are very intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated, like grades get them something, like, extra privileges at home or whatever, they have found a way. I think a lot of other kids, more kids than ever before, are with me and then not with me. Like they work pretty well, and then they just have times when they kind of take a hiatus or step back from it. And then of course we have kids that haven't engaged at all or very little, and we don't have the magic wand for that. We have a lot of layered supports for kids and that kind of stuff, but it's just a weird, for lack of any better word, it's just a weird non-traditional setting. And some of them chose to stay home for very real reasons in their homes, and school can't be a priority.
So, and I know some school districts are big and some school districts are small. Like we know your school district that you work in, the Central Dauphin District, is big. But now, like compared to like another school where Middletown is a lot smaller than that. So like between the big schools and the small schools, have some schools benefited from this? Have some not benefited from it? Or do you think all schools, no matter whether they're big or small, or if they have a lot of money or not, have all schools benefited from this? Or have some have and some haven't?
Well, I know in our district, it forced a conversation about one-to-one for the secondary level, the high school particularly, that had kind of not happened before, because being big, it was difficult to have all those devices. But some CARES money and everything was used to add to our devices, so kids could have devices during this time, and we're going truly one-to-one next year. So there'll be beneficial technologies. I think some of the smaller schools probably could take advantage of that sooner than we could, but I'm going to bet the risks versus benefits look pretty much the same regardless of the school. It just might be on greater numbers at bigger schools than it is, but proportionately and the kind of things we're all dealing with, I think that's universal. I don't think size makes a difference.
Do you know if students had benefited from this during these unprecedented times?
I'm going to say again, technology, and for us finding ways. I do think there's kids that core is working for, and in my district, core means you remote learn. And there are probably kids who could have benefited from it all along. Maybe they're, in a type of sport like ice hockey or figure skating or, competitive dance or something like that, where attending school and being involved in those things was difficult. So I think there's kids who just naturally like learning independently and at home, that prefer to be at home than in school. Certainly anybody who has school anxieties, those sorts of things. So core is working from some kids, so that would be a benefit for that type of learner. The technology and the fact that we've worked so hard to have digital and virtual experiences is certainly a benefit because it gives kids, right now in my classroom, if you prefer paper, you get prefer paper. But even if you're in person and want to do a virtual or digital experience, you have that too. So, we're definitely hitting more modes of learning now than we probably were before. We've had to be really creative, but we're in reaction right now. It'll be nice to see what happens when people are doing it when you're not in crisis and having to react to the crisis, when you just, here's the plan and how you can, have resources and then kind of pick and choose instead of being, I have to use this.
So where you say kids have benefited from this, how would you say kids who have a learning disability, how have they been impacted by this, or have they benefited from this?
Well, I would think kids with learning disabilities or non-English speaking, or what we call English language developing learners, I would think they're probably a population that it's been the hardest to find something that works. And it's not one size fits all. What works for one student isn't going to work for the next student, isn't going to work for the third student, etc. I think the best thing we have right now this year to accommodate those is just you build a relationship as best you can with those kids, with the families at home, and you make sure you're supporting them. You encourage them to advocate for when they're struggling with something, and you provide them with curriculum that's appropriate. But that is definitely a concern, that those populations definitely have probably struggled to find the benefit better.
So it's all about having a plan, in action, and in a way being a cheerleader for the students to help get them through times like this.
Absolutely.
So what do you think is one thing all the teachers, like you and teachers here throughout the U.S. and the world, along with students, have learned through this pandemic?
Well, the first thing is we really don't have crisis plans. Are great for on-site crises, but we really didn't have this anywhere in our outlook. So probably some advanced planning for things that, scenarios you just had to be prepared for, even if you never execute it. I think the other thing is the need to see kids, even if you're just seeing them through a Zoom, there's nothing to replace that. Like we were all commenting today that even though our kids aren't with us, and of course last minute that meant we had to tear apart what we were expecting to do this week because now they're not in person, it was nice to teach them without our masks on. Like if they attend the Zoom class, they got to see me without a mask on, and you just, it's different. It's that sort of thing. I think also, I'm going to be honest, a lot of society has not been kind. And that just comes from thinking you know what this is. And I understand people are frustrated. It affected their homes. The only thing I can say is it affected ours too. Many teachers, I have an older child, but many of my colleagues have young school age children too, or daycare age children, and they had to find people to cover their children and help supervise their children. And they too got sick, or they had homes that got sick, or they had homes that got quarantined. So it really did happen to everybody, and we're part of that equation too.
So would you say, with everything that's going on, like with this virus, do you think politics has played a part in this on how schools should be open or closed during the virus? Do you feel like politics needed to get in this, or do you think politics got in a place where it didn't need to be?
Well, politics is everywhere. I'm sure there were some decisions that were purely political, but I also am quick to remind people that we don't do those jobs. And just like I don't like when people judge my job when they don't do my job, I always respect the fact that I was not in that position to be making those decisions. So I try and have it. I'm not always good at it, but I try and take perspective. And the bottom line is, it feels like there was a lack of preparedness. And whenever there's a lack of preparedness in an emergency and you're reliant on officials, there is the invitation for politics. So were politics there? Absolutely. Is there a solution to that? Probably not.
So my last question is this. Not only you as a teacher, but what did you yourself personally have learned since the start of this pandemic?
Well, I think we've learned to appreciate simpler things. I think a silver lining to everything was that we were all forced to slow down, and we all found ways to still celebrate things that were important to us. I think in our house, health, the fact that we all came out on the other side healthy now, is extremely important. I think personal connection obviously shone a huge light. In education, I think we all feel better prepared to handle a digital world. I think we also feel how important we can be to just one kid. And that's been a struggle when you struggle to be there for that one kid, if you're their one person or whatever. I know it has made a lot of colleagues tighter. We have worked together well because we were all trying to accomplish a goal quickly. So there's some good to come out of everything. And I think it remains to be seen. I think a little later on when we do the history of this, we'll have a better list of what was good or what was not so good.
So your one message to everybody out there watching is that schools are in this together. We're doing this every single day, day in, day out, and we're a team.
That's how it definitely feels right now. Yeah, that we have done what we needed to do, and it's been messy and clumsy, but we accept the challenge and we're doing the best we can.
Well, Chris, or Mom, thank you for your time, and we all hope schools are on their way to becoming back to normal. And this is the end of a Mitch's Minutes special interview. I'm Mitch Carson. Thanks for watching, and take care of yourself.